Have you ever considered setting your garden up on irrigation and a timer? I can tell you from experience, it is one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my garden. It saves me so much time from having to physically go out and water every day, and it gives me back that time to be able to do other things like harvest and plant and take care of the weeds and all of the other tasks that come along with gardening. Watering is one of the only things that can actually be automated in the garden, and it should be. So in today's video, I'm going to share 5 different irrigation setups so that you can envision how your garden might look and choose the layout that would work best for you in your garden. So first, let's start out with my main garden area. So right here we have 2 faucets. The first faucet is connected to a timer with 2 zones, and the first zone is connected to the 1/2-inch line, and it just runs along this picket fence. And I have it set up this way so that if I ever choose to plant flowers or bushes, anything along this fence, I already have the irrigation line there to support it. And it runs along this fence. Down here I have an elbow, and it comes across, and then it runs into these 2 larger raised beds. So you can see right here I have a T because the line is going to continue on to that next bed, and right here at the T it goes this way to this first bed, and at the second raised bed I have an elbow because that's where the line ends and then runs to this bed. And so the connection into the bed is an elbow that runs up the box to another elbow, and then I have an on and off valve so that if I ever don't have things planted in this garden bed, I can physically turn the garden bed off. And then at each plant I just have quarter line tubing that runs to a stake with a adjustable emitter right on top. So each plant gets its own stake with an adjustable emitter, and the quarter line tubing connects to the 1/2-inch tubing, which is in the center of each bed. And now for the second faucet. So the second faucet has a timer with 4 zones, and this one single zone controls the 6 remaining raised beds. So it comes off of the timer down to an elbow, over to a T, and up the raised bed to an elbow. And then I have the on and off valve so that if this bed needed to be turned off, I could just turn it off. And then the 1/2-inch line runs right down the center of the bed. And down here, instead of just putting an end cap right here, I put a T, and I have the line go across each edge. And the reason I choose to do that is so that depending on what I have planted, I could connect drip line to this 1/2-inch tubing. So you don't if you know exactly what you're going to plant in each bed and you're not going to do something like that, right here you could just put an end cap versus a T. But I recommend setting it up this way because it gives you the option of connecting drip line tubing in the future if you need to. And then I just connect the 1/4-inch tubing to each stake, which goes to each plant. So that was just the first bed, but you can see I have the 1/2-inch line that was connected to the T, and it runs right here to another T so that I can follow it across down to these beds, which connects to another T, and then goes to this bed where it ends, just connects to an elbow, and then to another elbow, and to my on and off switch. And then it goes across, and there's another T right here, up to an elbow, on and off switch, across to an elbow where it ends, up to another elbow. So that's the setup for out here in this main garden area. And so now these other 3 zones go out to the second area that I want to show you, which is these long rows, and they're each about 90, I think this area is about 90 feet long. And so right here I have a T on this first row because these are my 2 rows of tomatoes. And so then right here it comes to an elbow, and these 2 rows run on the same watering zone because it's all of my tomatoes, and the 1/2-inch line just comes to each tomato plant, and I have an adjustable emitter just popped right into the 1/2-inch main line at each tomato plant. I didn't worry about stakes for these rows because I know exactly where the plants are going to be, and so I don't need stakes. I just put the emitters directly into the 1/2-inch line tubing. So one of these zones was specifically to the 2 rows of tomatoes, and then the other 2 zones are their each individual line. And so right here I have it run down to an elbow, and this directly controls one line of vegetables. And then the other zone controls this line, which runs down to another elbow. And this is this one line of vegetable plants. And so the reason why I have everything on its own zone is so that this whole area can be watered at different watering times. So I don't have anything in multiple zones kick on at the same time, because you want to maintain adequate water pressure. So for example, this first line, which controls one long row, will kick on, for example, maybe at 8 a.m. and run for 15 to 20 minutes. And then this one would kick on at 8:30, run for 15 to 20 minutes. This one maybe at 9 o'clock, and this one at 9:30. So nothing is running at the same time, because you want to maintain adequate water pressure. And so if you have everything on at the same time, things are going to be slow and you're not going to have the right amount of water pressure. So separating things out into different zones is very helpful. But to give you an idea, this one zone right here controls these six garden beds, and I have plenty of water pressure. The single zone right over here controls the two larger beds over on the far end that we first looked at. That's plenty of pressure. And then one zone waters these two long rows of tomato beds, or two long rows of tomatoes, with no problem. And then I have the other two remaining zones, which do one row at a time. And I could actually probably have these two long rows on the same zone, but because I have very different plants in the two rows, I choose to have them separately so I can adjust watering as needed. So I just wanted to take a closer look at these raised beds and show you a few different things. So I know I've been mentioning that I have an on and off valve at each garden bed, and I really like that, because then if there's nothing planted in here, I could just shut off the garden bed or turn it on. The other thing that allows you to do is that if there's certain days where certain crops look like they need more water, but others don't, you could just shut this valve off and let everything else water, but not this bed in particularly. Right here I have asparagus growing, and I have drip line on each side of the asparagus. This is a perfect crop to have drip line for, because everything's planted close enough that, or I guess this is the first year with my asparagus, so next year as more is filling in, this is going to be the perfect watering for it. And I have also fan emitters to give some extra water, but I have the drippers, which are really helpful on each side of the asparagus. And so that is why I really like to have at the end of each bed the 1/2 inch tubing go connect to a T versus just an end cap right here, because now you can see I have drip line connected to the 1/2 inch line on both sides of my asparagus row. And if I didn't want to have drip line anymore, all I would need to do is just put a little goof plug in this spot, and then the water wouldn't drip out anymore. So you can see actually right there, I used to have drip line, but I moved it to right here. So I just put in a goof plug that plugged the spot, and I put this drip line right there. I know that many garden kits promote drip line, but I really prefer to have an adjustable emitter at each plant so that you can turn it down if needed, or turn it up to have more water. It makes it really nice, because then each plant can individually be adjusted, whereas if you have drip line, then you cannot manually adjust it. Everything's going to be getting the same amount of water. But right here with the adjustable emitters, each plant gets a specific amount of water, and you can turn it up or turn it down. However, drip line can be really helpful for crops that are closely spaced together, like spinach and lettuce and arugula and radishes and carrots. When plants are really close together, drip line is great. But when it comes to plants that are spaced further apart, like tomatoes and peppers and squash, it's great to use a stake with an emitter on top so that you can individually control each plant and not truly depend just on the drip line. And if you'd like a list of all of the different irrigation parts that I use that I'm showing you out here in my garden right now, I have an entire list below that you can download for free, and so that you can go and order all the parts you need, or at least take it into your local irrigation store and get the right parts that I'm showing you right here in this video. And so the link for that list will be in the description below. And now on to the third super simple setup, which is for some fruit trees. And right over here we have the 1/2 inch line connected to the faucet, and it runs right along here down to an elbow. And then we have it run to each fruit tree. Right here we have a young lemon tree and another young lime tree. And then we have more mature fruit trees. We have some persimmons and apricots. And for the more mature trees, we have a stake with an emitter on each side of the tree. And for the younger trees, we just have one stake with 1 emitter at each tree. So this is just a super simple way that you can set your fruit trees up on irrigation, or any type of fruit or bush that you have, but it's just the 1/2 inch line all the way down to the end with the stakes and emitters at each tree. If you would like more information on setting up irrigation in your home garden, I have an entire course called Effortless Irrigation, and it will be linked in the description below. It covers everything from the research and planning that goes into figuring out what sort of irrigation that you need in your garden, how to install it, how to get all the correct materials, how to do all the fine-tuning and maintenance to keep things running properly. And so definitely check that out in the description. And if you're still in the planning phase of your garden and you're wondering whether or not you should plant in raised beds or in the ground, or maybe a combination of both like I have out here in my garden, I have a video right here which covers the pros and cons of in-ground planting and raised bed gardening. And so be sure to head to that video next, and I'll see you there.